We're singing, hi neighbor, what do you know and what do you say? Hi neighbor, throw all your worries away. We're here to entertain you in that barber shop style. So throw your cares and troubles aside for a while. We're singing, hi neighbor, now's the time to say hi. Now's the time to say hi.
Welcome to the second Salad Expo. I am your MC for today. My name is Phil Doerr. Our show is designed to foster connections among performing artists while also producing art collectively. The Salad Expo brings a variety of styles together, each keeping to its own integrity. Today's theme is finding, and part one is exploration. For our first number, please enjoy the Kansas State song, Home on the Range, as arranged by Jim Clancy of the Vocal Majority.
Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Oh, give me a land where the white diamond sand flows leisurely down the stream, where the graceful white swan goes gliding along like a maid in a heavenly dream. Then I would not exchange my home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Not cloudy all day.
Now, Allison Yapel will share a solo prose piece in the style of academic forensics competitions. This style, similar to Reader's Theater, which you will hear later, emphasizes the strength of the literature.
All right, this piece is called Giving Notes by Victoria Wood. Right, bit of hush, please. Connie, thank you. Now, that was quite a good rehearsal. I was quite pleased. There were a few raised eyebrows when we let it slip that the pie crust players were having a bash at Shakespeare, but, well, I think we're getting there. But I can't say this too often. It may be Hamlet, but it's got to be fun, fun, fun. Right. We're still very loose on our lines. Oh, Barbara. Yes, Barbara. You will have to buckle down. Ophelia's mad scene. There's Rosemary. That's for remembrance. Well, it's no good just bunging a few herbs about and waving them around. Well, don't mind me. I'm a loony, right? You see, this is our marvelous bard, Barbara. You cannot paraphrase. This isn't Pinter, where you can more or less say what you like as long as you leave enough gaps. Good. Oh, right. Act 1, Scene 1. On the ramparts. Now, I know the whist table is a bit wobbly, but until Stan works out how to adapt the beanstalk, it'll have to do. Oh, yes. What's this? Atmosphere. Oh, yes. Now, what did we work on, Philip? Yes, it's midnight. It's jolly cold. And what do we do when it's cold? We go burr, and we do this, right? Okay, well, try not to forget again, please. All right. And, cut the hot water bottle. It's not working. Okay, where's my ghost of Hamlet's father? Oh, yes. What went wrong tonight, Betty? Oh, he's still on nights, is he? Oh, well, it's really not on for you to play that particular part, Betty. You're already doing the player queen in the back legs of Hamlet's donkey. Well, we don't know he didn't have one, do we? Why waste a good Cossie? Oh, Hamlet, yes. Drop the Geordie, David. It's not coming over. Your characterization's reasonably good, but it's just far too gloomy. Fair enough. Make him a little bit depressed at the beginning, but start lightening it up from scene 2, okay? Oh, and David, perhaps the get thee to a nunnery, perhaps give a little wink to the audience or something, because he's really just having her on, isn't he? Right. Oh, yes. Grave diggers. Oh, yes, grave diggers. The problem here is Shakespeare hasn't really given us much to play with, right? I feel a bit like we're short on laughs. So, Harold, you just do a bit of your dribbling, and Arthur, you just go along with it, right? Okay. And the mad scene, yes. Well, apart from lines, much better. Barbara, I can tell you're getting more used to the straitjacket. Good. All right, well, that's it for tonight then. Thank you. Now, I shall expect you to be word perfect by the next rehearsal. Well, have any of you realized what date we're up to? April 27th. And when do we open? August. Oh, it's not long. Thank you.
And now, folks, to get your Halloween started early, from the mind of Timothy Burns to your mind, an original radio drama, Embers of Regret.
As a slight note, since this is spooky, there may be some audible jump scares, so be prepared for that.
Welcome, ghouls and ghosts. for a spine-chilling tale from the Amber Waves Radio Hour. Today's tale is one of mystery, suspense, and horror. It is the story of a lonely kid, a haunted house, and loss. So get ready for some thrills and chills in tonight's terrifying tale, Embers of Regret.
I remember that night as clearly as I can see you now. The odd footsteps and breathing, that awful sound, the blood, the screams. Oh God, the screams! Danny screams! Danny! Danny! Oh God, what's happening to you? Please talk to me, please!
It's all right. Try to calm down. You're safe here. Can you start from the beginning?
I'll try. It was my first semester at a new school. We moved here a few months earlier for Dad's new job. I'm not very active socially and mostly stick to maintaining my grades, so I really hadn't managed to find any friends yet. I spent most lunch periods alone and just tried to get through the day.
That's a bit far back. Tell me about that day.
I'm getting there. As I said, I spent most lunch periods alone, so I was very surprised when Frankie and her gang sat next to me.
Frankie?
Francine Newman, the most popular girl in school and the biggest bully. Her dad is the superintendent of the district and she can do no wrong in his eyes. She did whatever she wanted with zero consequences. When I saw her approaching, I had tried to get up and leave. Hey! Oh! Hey, Frankie! Nice to see ya! Well, I'd better be off to my next class.
Hey, not so fast, Jerry. I mean, the gals and I just want to talk.
Look, I've told you several times, I'm not going to help you cheat your way through the year. I don't care who your daddy is or how popular you are. Now, if you'll excuse me...
I promise I'm not going to hurt you, okay?
Okay?
Good. We've been watching you for several weeks now, and I gotta say, we're impressed.
We are? I mean, yeah, we are, yeah.
Yeah, of course we are.
Impressed with me.
Yeah, I mean, the way you've stuck to your guns and haven't caved into pressure, you have a certain amount of loyalty to yourself, which I can respect. That got us thinking. We think you might be a good fit for our group, don't we? I said, don't we?
Yes, of course.
Gee, that's, nice. Thanks.
Well, of course, there is just a little matter of initiation.
Right, of course. Initiation. What would I have to do?
You know the old Simmons place?
I believe so. That's supposed to be haunted, right?
Sure is. They say some cult used the place for demonic rituals. It's never been confirmed, but apparently they summoned something so terrible, none of them made it out alive. Supposedly, the police found their bodies so mangled, they were barely recognizable. To this day, people swear they've heard horrifying screams coming from the place. Some ghost hunters tried to investigate it once. Well, nobody knows why, but none of their equipment would work inside. Legend says, if you can stay in the house past midnight, even for a minute, you'll wind up like those bodies.
What do I have to do?
Well, if you can last till midnight, you're in. Simple as that.
And if I don't?
Oh, no harm, no foul. We'll have to tell everyone what a flake you are, of course.
I guess I was pretty desperate for any friends that I actually decided to try and go through with it. I'd never completely believed in the supernatural before, so I didn't feel like I had anything to lose. I had no idea at that time what was in store for me or what would happen to Danny.
You mentioned that name before. Who is Danny?
My little brother. Oh, God. I can't do this. Please don't make me keep going.
I'm sorry, but I need you to continue.
After school that day, I told my folks that I made a few friends and that they wanted to hang out after dinner. I guess that they were so happy for me, they didn't bother asking any questions. They just told me to be safe and not make a ruckus when I got home. Danny must have overheard about it from the hallway because he wouldn't stop bothering me about it.
So, hanging out with some friends, huh?
Yes, Danny, some friends. Is that so unusual? Why do you care?
For you? Yeah, it's odd. Seeing as how you spend all your time cooped up in your room by yourself, I've never seen you bring any friends home.
Fine, I get your point.
So, who are your new friends? Well, are they cool? What do they look like?
None of your business, dweebo.
You're the dweebo. What? Are you too embarrassed to tell me? Oh, I bet I know. These new friends of yours, it's a guy, isn't it?
No, it is not a guy.
Jerry's got a boyfriend. What's his name?
I'm not telling you. Besides, it's not a boy. This is not a date. Now will you shut up already?
Fine. I'll be quiet. Hey, Mom! Dad! Jerry's got a...
Ouch! You bit me!
Will you put your hand on my mouth?
Look, I'm telling you for the last time, there is no boy, and this is not a date. I'm just meeting a bunch of girls from school to hang out for a bit, okay?
Okay, well, if it's not a date, then can I come, huh? Can I?
No!
God, gee, come on, Jerry, please.
I said no. This is not for little kids,
Hey,
okay?
I'm not little. I'm only like 3 years younger than you are.
Look, I don't care. You're not going to come with me. Besides, isn't your bedtime like an hour away?
We'll check back in on Geraldine in a moment. For now, let's hear a word from one of our sponsors.
Finally, a peaceful day off. What to do first? Perhaps a mid-morning snack. Oh, for Pete's sake. Honey, we've got another one.
That's the third portal to hell this week. Well, I've had it. Either we find a way to stop this from happening, or I'm leaving. I mean it. I can't take another late night trip to the bathroom only to open the lid and see another horrifying blob of jabbering teeth and tendrils snapping at me.
If only there was a way to prevent this.
Unwanted portals to hell popping up in your house?
Ah!
Who are you?
And yes, they are.
Sorry about the dramatic entrance. I'm Deborah Droom.
And I'm Darren Droom.
From
Droom's Demon Portal Prevention Services.
We help folks like you with unwanted portals to hell.
Wow, what convenient timing. Well, how exactly do you prevent these portals from popping up?
Our experts install a thick ring of salt around your residence and carve various sigils of protection into your walls.
Then we chant and make a small blood offering. That's it!
No more portals to hell.
Wow! How much does this cost?
We don't concern ourselves with money.
We'll just need the thing you love the most as a sacrifice.
What?
It's a deal.
Droom's Demon Portal Prevention Services.
If you need us, just scream.
We know where you are.
Now, let's check back in on Geraldine.
I see. What happened next?
Danny stormed off, and I didn't see him till later that night. At 8 o'clock, I said goodnight to my parents, and then I hopped on my bike and I started riding toward the old Simmons place. It must have taken me longer than I thought to get over there because Frankie and her bunch were starting to walk away from the place when I got there.
Come on, Frankie, let's bounce. The nerd's not coming.
She'll be here. I saw it in her eyes. She'll do anything to fit in.
Fine. But if she ain't here in the next 30 seconds, I'm out of here.
Yeah, me
I'm hungry.
Oh, you're always hungry. Look, if I say she'll be here, she'll be here.
I'm here. Sorry, it took a little longer to get up the hill than I thought.
Fine. Good to see you, Jerry. You ready?
As ready as I'll ever be, I guess. Can I at least have a flashlight?
Of course. What kind of heartless jerk would I be if I sent you in there with nothing? Here.
A lantern? Seriously? Does this thing even work?
Electronics don't work in that place, remember? So it's this or nothing. Now, you remember the deal, right? If you can last till midnight, you're part of the group.
And if I don't, no harm, no foul, but you'll tell everyone I'm a flake. I got it. Well, better get going, I suppose. See you all at midnight.
Not unless we see you first.
I started making my way toward the front door. It looked the way you'd expect a real haunted house to look. Dead vines covering various portions of the house, old paint, chipped and peeling away, broken windows, an overgrown lawn, and of course, it wouldn't be complete without a bunch of crows that took off as soon as I entered the property. I was almost to the door when I turned around to look back to see if Frankie and her gang were still watching me. They weren't. They had vanished. If they had never been there. And as odd as that was, I decided to press onwards. I inched my way towards the front door, and a sudden wave of unease just washed over me. I felt my fingers tremble as I reached for the door. Before I could even lay a hand on the knob, an icy gust of wind blew from behind me and just flung the door open. You can do this. You just need to last till midnight. That's not so bad, right? It's just a house. Just mortar, stone, and some wood. What could possibly go wrong? I would grow to regret saying those words.
We'll be right back to our tale of terror in just a moment. But first, a message from our sponsor.
Are you sure this will work?
Of course I'm sure. Now, sit down while I finish this. Let's see. Roasted coffee, beans, cricket legs, water. Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble. Soon I'll have a potion to make your energy double.
That doesn't fit the rhythm scheme.
Shut up. Now, just for a little taste.
Oh my goodness! Are you okay?
Never better, dearie! With over 300 milligrams of caffeine in every bottle of this Cricket brand coffee, you'll be awake before your first sip!
Well, that's incredible!
No! It's Cricket brand coffee! Get some now, or be cursed with low energy for life!
And now, back to our chilling tale.
I slowly made my way into the house and carefully selected a place to sit down. To say it was filthy would be an understatement. There must have been a layer of dust, at least 6 inches deep, covering all surfaces. I sat there for what must have been an hour, watching the remainder of the light slowly fading and listening to the house settle. The first few cracks and pops set my nerves on edge. I don't know whether it was the creepy atmosphere or the thought of the house collapsing on me where I sat, but I felt like I couldn't just stay where I was. Somehow, I worked up the courage to start exploring. By that time, it was nearly pitch black inside, so I decided to try to get the lantern lit. Luckily, I always kept a matchbook on me. You never know when you may need a light in the dark. It took a few attempts and at least a half a dozen matches, but I managed to get it lit, and so I began exploring. I started with the kitchen. A small pool of stagnant water had gathered on the floor, probably from a recent storm. Mold-encrusted dishes filled the sink, and the bones of some small creature were left on the floor after some predator's meal. I opened the pantry doors next, and a wave of moths and cockroaches flooded around me. It's just a bunch of bugs. Nothing to be worried about. What was that? Hello? Is anyone there? Must be my imagination. Okay, let's see. 9:45. Still a couple hours to go. What the hell? Frankie, is that you? Look, this isn't funny. Look, whoever this is, just stop it, okay? It won't work. By this point, I'd had enough and decided to venture upstairs to see for myself what was going on. I could feel the stairs bending and cracking with each step. The journey to the top felt as though it lasted an eternity. But eventually, I reached the landing. Somehow, this area seemed even more run down than the previous floor. I began making my way down the hallway when I heard those same footsteps. They almost seemed to be mirroring my own, and I suddenly had the feeling that I was being watched. A few more steps, and I'd reached the first door. I slowly moved my hand toward the doorknob.
Oh! I got you. What's the matter? Are you scared, Jerry? I bet you almost wet yourself.
It wasn't funny, Danny.
Speak for yourself. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, it wasn't. Oh, damn it, Danny. What are you doing here anyway? Aren't you supposed to be at home asleep?
Well, you wouldn't let me come with you or tell me anything about it, which is weird, so I just snuck out and followed you. What are you doing here anyway? Isn't this place supposed to be haunted?
Supposedly. Look, I wouldn't expect you to fully understand, but I'm just not that great at making friends, okay? I'm not as outgoing as you are. Everyone just thinks I'm a goody-goody who's friends with the teachers and only cares about getting good grades and following the rules. So, when the most popular girl in school said that she respected me and offered me a chance to be a part of her group, I took it. Is it ideal? No. But all I have to do is stay here for a couple more hours and I'm in. So why don't you just leave me in peace and go home?
Or we could play hide and seek to pass the time. 1, 2, 3, not it!
What? Danny! Stop! Danny! Oh, damn it, Danny!
What happened next?
I didn't feel like putting up with Danny's nonsense, so I went back downstairs and I just tried to ignore him. Another hour passed. I sat on the sofa while Danny would occasionally try to scare me with over-the-top ghost voices and tried to get me to play with him.
Help me!
Needless to say, I decided to ignore him in the hopes that he would get bored and go home. By the time 11 o'clock rolled around, I hadn't heard from Danny in a while. I assumed he'd given up and gone home. It was dark and quiet. I'd been dozing off, so it would have been easy for him to sneak past me without me even noticing. When I came to, it was around 11:30. Just 30 minutes to go. I got up to look around one more time, and that's when I heard those heavy footsteps directly behind me, along with the heavy breathing. I whipped around, and nothing was there. It had to be my mind playing tricks on me, I thought. I turned back around to find Frankie towering over me, smiling.
How's it going, Jerry?
Don't do that!
I see you're still here. I'm impressed. I mean, most don't make it past an hour. Remember, just 30 more minutes to go and you're in.
To be honest, beyond the general dirt and grime, it really hasn't been all that bad. Creepy? Sure, but haunted? I don't know about that.
Help, Jerry! Someone's got me!
What the hell was that?
Oh, for Pete's sake, he's still here. My little brother Danny, he followed me. He snuck in. He's been trying to mess with me. Just ignore him.
Okay, I'm all for a good joke, but that doesn't sound like a joke scream.
Ignore it. He's just trying to get my attention again. He'll stop in a minute. See? On the other hand, Danny, come on, this isn't funny. Where are you?
Come on, kid. Where you at?
Stop it, Danny. Look, I told you this isn't funny. Where are you? Oh my God! I expected to see Danny inside, but what I found was a mangled, bloody mass of bones and flesh just writhing on the floor. I wanted to bolt out of there as fast as I could, but then I noticed its eyes. They were filled with terror and pain, and yet they seemed familiar. Danny? Oh God, what the hell happened to you? No, this can't be real. This is just my mind playing tricks on me again.
No, I think this is real. I thought the stories about this place were just a hoax, but this isn't right. We gotta get out of here.
No, not yet. We gotta do something. I mean, that's my brother, and I gotta help him.
Look at it, Geraldine. What do you propose we do, huh? Pray for it? Do a spiritual dance? It won't work. This thing is beyond saving. I'm not helping with this abomination. It's not real. It can't be. I'm getting the hell out of here.
Is that real enough for you? Look, I don't care if you let me in your little group or not, but we're not leaving until we find a way to help Danny. You got that? Then we can get the hell out of here.
Screw you. I'm getting out of here right now. Jerry, get me out of this. Help me, damn it, help me.
Sister, help me.
Geraldine, help me.
It's not real. It's not real. It can't be real.
Stop sitting there and help me get out of this, you bitch.
Sister, help.
Shut up. Stay away from me.
It's not real. It's not real. It's not real.
Help me.
I said stay away from me.
It hurts.
God, I wish I'd never come here tonight. This is all my fault.
Jerry,
That's everything. That's the whole story. I should have tried harder to save it, to save Danny. Oh God, it's all my fault. Danny, I'm so sorry.
I see. Well, that's an incredible story. But I'm afraid it sounds to me like just that. A story. Now, we would normally be charging you with arson and destruction of property, but seeing as how that place was condemned and likely to fall down on its own, we'll let you off with a light sentence, and you'll have to spend some time in juvie.
But what about Danny or Frankie?
Well, those will be filed as missing persons. We'll do what we can to locate them.
The bodies, didn't you see anything?
Miss, we went through the wreckage of the house when the fire stopped, and we didn't find any human remains to corroborate that part of your story. Sorry, kid.
Well, folks, that wraps up another episode from the Amber Waves Radio Hour. Today's episode was written by Timothy W. Burns. We hope it warmed your hearts and your homes. Till next time, sleep tight.
One of the great quartets of barbershop harmony history was Boston Common. We now share with you one of their charts, which has become a barbershop harmony standard.
Song of tomorrow, our hearts were as high as the sky, but songs are forgotten and skies often gray. Nevertheless, there is this I can say. From the first hello to the last goodbye, it's been awfully nice to know you. So excuse the parting sigh, and I'll with my head held high. You've been dear and sweet, a pleasure to meet, a special treat, say I, from the first hello to the last goodbye.
We now transition to part 2 of our theme, Finding, Adventure.
Key to heaven is lost in all the fluff. I had it in my pocket with all my other stuff. I tried to buy another but couldn't raise enough. Finding my purpose has proven to be rough. Searching in the night for the path you hope is right. Follow the light, it's hiding in plain sight. Hanging on a fence, blows its way in the breeze. Left here by the masses that I could not appease. I tried to sell my future, even got down on my knees. Got to find a ticket, I got this pain to ease. Searching in the night for the path you hope is right. Follow the light, it's hiding in plain sight. I even lent my hand to borrow, beg and steal, never quite finding the way that I should feel. Hiding in the shadows I try to strike a deal, only to discover that nothing real is real. Searching in the night for a path you hope is right. Follow the light, it's hiding in plain sight. Thank you.
That was Lori Morovic and Brooks Olivier performing their original song, It's Hiding in Plain Sight. Now we present Salient Scientists, words straight from important researchers of the past. First up, by himself in this part of the show, Charles Darwin. Now, scientists are often misunderstood, being human like the rest of us. Researchers are prone to the same strengths, persistence, enjoyment of discovery, cleverness, and weaknesses, seeing what we wish to see, ego, envy, and jealousy. Yet, as with any occupation, there are skills and mindsets that become baked into one's work through the rigors of the daily grind. Scientists must call for more research. They must learn to use terms like probably and maybe in their writing and their speech. And they must always acknowledge that they do not know everything that can be known on a topic.
As species are produced and exterminated by slowly acting and still existing causes, and not by miraculous acts of creation and by catastrophes, and as the most important of all these causes of organic change is one which is almost independent of altered and perhaps suddenly altered physical conditions, namely the mutual relation of organism to organism, the improvement of one being entailing the improvement or the extermination of others. It follows that the amount of organic change in the fossils of consecutive formations probably serves as a fair measure of the lapse of actual time. During the early periods of Earth's history, when the forms of life were probably fewer and simpler, the rate of change was probably slower, and at the first dawn of life, when very few forms of the simplest structure existed, the rate of change may have been slow in an extreme degree. In the distant future, I see open fields for far more important researches. Light will be thrown on the origin of man and his history. Judging from the past, we may safely infer that not one living species will transmit its unaltered likeness to a distant futurity. And of the species now living, very few will transmit progeny of any kind to a far distant futurity, for the manner in which all organic beings are grouped shows that the greater number of species of each genus and all the species of many genera have left no descendants, but have become utterly extinct. It is interesting to contemplate an entangled bank clothed with many plants of many kinds, with birds singing on the bushes, with various insects flitting about, and with worms crawling through the damp earth, and reflect that these elaborately constructed forms, so different from each other and dependent on each other in so complex a manner, have all been produced by laws acting around us. These laws, taken in the largest sense, growth and reproduction, inheritance, which is almost implied by reproduction, variability from the indirect and direct action of the external conditions of life, and from use and disuse. A ratio of increase so high as to lead a struggle for life, and as a consequence to natural selection, entailing divergence of the character and the extinction of less improved forms. Thus, from the war of nature, from famine and death, the most exalted object which we are capable of conceiving, namely the production of higher animals, directly follows. There is a grandeur in this view of life, with its several powers having been originally breathed into few forms or into one, and that, whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed law of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved.
Our next two pieces are a poem, Magdalene the Addict, presented by Allison Yapel, and a Reader's Theater presentation of Skeleton Lake, an episode in camp, by Algernon Blackwood. Skeleton Lake is a horror story of a different kind, the kind that you realize could really happen.
I liked hell. I liked to go there alone, relieved to lie in the wreckage, ruined, physically undone. The worst had happened. What else could hurt me then? I thought it was the worst. Thought nothing worse could come. Then nothing did. And no one.
The utter loneliness of our moose camp on Skeleton Lake had impressed us from the beginning. In the Quebec backwoods, 5 days by trail and canoe from civilization. And perhaps the singular name contributed a little to the sensation of eeriness that made itself felt in the camp circle when once the sun was down and the late October mists began rising from the lake and winding their way in among the tree trunks. For in these regions, all names of lakes and hills and islands have their origin in some actual event. Skeleton Lake, therefore, was a name full of suggestion, and though none of us knew the origin or the story of its birth, we all were conscious of a certain lugubrious atmosphere that haunted its shores and islands. And but for the evidence of recent moose tracks in its neighborhood, we should probably have pitched our tents elsewhere. For several hundred miles in any direction, we knew of only one other party of whites. They went into camp on Beaver Creek, 50 miles and more to the west of us. But that was 6 weeks ago, and seemed as many months, for days and nights pass slowly in these solitudes, and the scale of time changes wonderfully. Our men always seemed to know by instinct pretty well where them other fellows was moving. But in the interval, no one had come across their trails, or once so much as heard their rifle shots. Our little camp consisted of our professor, his wife, a splendid shot and keen woodswoman, and myself. We had a guide apiece and hunted daily in pairs from before sunrise till dark. It was our last evening in the woods, and the professor was laying in my little wedge tent discussing the dangers of hunting alone in couples in this way. The flap of the tent hung back and let in a fragrant odors of cooking over an open wood fire. Everywhere there were bustle and preparation, and one canoe already lay packed with moose horns, her nose pointing southwards.
If an accident happened to one of them, the survivor's story, when he returned to camp, would be entirely unsupported evidence, wouldn't it? Because you see... And he went on laying down the law after the manner of professors.
Until I became so bored that my attention began to wander to pictures and memories of the scenes we were just about to leave. The hum of the professor's voice in time grew more soothing. A nod or a grunt was all the reply he looked for. Fortunately, he loathed interruptions. I think I could almost have gone to sleep under his very nose. Perhaps I did sleep a brief interval. Then it all came about so quickly, and the tragedy of it was so unexpected and painful, throwing our peaceful camp into momentary confusion, that now it all seems to have happened in the uncanny swiftness of a dream.
First, there was the abrupt ceasing of the droning voice, and then the running of quick little steps over the pine needles, and the confusion of men's voices. And the next instant, the professor's wife was at the tent door, hatless, her face white, her hunting bloomers bagging at all the wrong places, a rifle in her hand, and her words running into one another anyhow. "Quick, Harry, it's Rushton! I was asleep and it woke me. Something's happened. You must deal with it."
In a second, we were outside the tent with our rifles.
My God, it is Rushton!
I saw the guides helping, dragging a man out of a canoe. A brief space of silence followed in which I heard only the waves from the canoe washing up on the sand. And then immediately after came the voice of a man talking with amazing rapidity and with odd gaps between his words. It was Rushton telling his story, and the tones of his voice, now whispering, now almost shouting, mixed with sobs and solemn oaths and frequent appeals to the deity, somehow or other struck the false note at the very start, and before any of us guessed or knew anything at all. Something moved secretly between his words, a shadow veiling the stars, destroying the peace of our little camp and touching us all personally with an undefinable sense of horror and distrust. I could see that group to this day, standing halfway between the firelight and the darkness, a slight mist rising from the lake, the frosty stars, and our men in silence that was all sympathy, dragging Rushton towards the campfire. Their moccasins crunched on the sand and slipped several times on the stones beneath the weight of the limp, exhausted body. And I can still see every inch of the pared cedar branch he had used as a paddle on that lonely and dreadful journey. But what struck me most was the limp exhaustion of his body compared to the tearing rush of his words. A vigorous driving power was there at work, forcing out the tale, red hot and throbbing, full of discrepancies and the strangest contradictions. I think we all understood then, but it was only after many years that any of us dared to confess what he thought. There was Matt Morris, my guide, Silver Fizz, whose real name was unknown and who bore the title of his favorite drink, and huge Hank Milligan, all ears and kind intention. And there was Rushton, pouring out his ready-made tale with ever-shifting eyes, turning from face to face, seeking confirmation of details none had witnessed but himself and one other.
Silver Fizz was the first to recover from the shock of the thing, and to realize, with the natural sense of chivalry common to most genuine backwoodsmen, that the man was at a terrible disadvantage. "Never mind telling it just now. Get a bite to eat first, and then let her go afterwards. You better have a horn of whiskey, too. It ain't all packed yet, I guess."
Couldn't eat or drink a thing? Good Lord, don't you see, man? I want to talk to someone first. I want to get it out of me to someone who can answer. Answer! I've had nothing but trees to talk with for 3 days, and I can't carry it alone any longer. Those cursed, silent trees. I've told it 1,000 times. Now just see here, it was this way. When we started out from camp...
He looked fearfully about him, and we realized it was useless to stop him. The story was bound to come, and come it did. Now, the story itself was nothing out of the way. It was the way he told it that made our flesh creep. He was near the truth all along, but he was skimming it. And the skimming took off the cream that might have saved his soul. Of course, he smothered it in words, odd words, too melodramatic, poetic, out-of-the-way words that lie just on the edge of frenzy. Of course, too, he kept asking us each in turn, scanning our faces with those restless, frightened eyes of his.
What would you have done? What else could I do?
And?
Was that my fault?
But that was nothing, for he told his story boldly, forcing his conclusions upon us as if we had been so many wax cylinders of a phonograph that would repeat accurately what had been told us. And these questions he used to emphasize any special point that he seemed to think required such emphasis. The fact was, however, the picture of what had actually happened was so vivid still in his own mind that it reached ours by a process of telepathy which he could not control or prevent.
Although his true-false words, this picture stood forth in fearful detail against the shadows behind him. He could not veil, much less obliterate it.
We knew, and I always thought he knew that we knew. The story itself, as I have said, was sufficiently ordinary. Jake and himself in a 9-foot canoe had upset in the middle of a lake and had held hands across the upturned craft for several hours, eventually cutting holes in her ribs to stick their arms through and grasp hands lest the numbness of the cold water should overcome them. They were miles from shore, and the wind was drifting them down upon a little island. But when they got within a few hundred yards of the island, they realized to their horror that they would, after all, drift past it. It was then the quarrel began. Jake was for leaving the canoe and swimming. Rushton believed in waiting till they actually had passed the island and were sheltered from the wind. Then they could easily make the island by swimming, canoe and all. But Jake refused to give in, and after a short struggle, Rushton admitted there was a struggle, got free from the canoe, and disappeared without a single cry. Rushton held on and proved the correctness of his theory, and finally made the island, canoe and all, after being in the water over 5 hours. He described to us how he crawled up onto the shore and fainted at once, with his feet lying half in the water. How lost and terrified he felt upon regaining consciousness in the dark. how the canoe had drifted away, and his extraordinary luck in finding it caught again at the end of the island by a projecting cedar branch. He told us that the little axe, another bit of real luck, had caught in the thwart when the canoe overturned, and how the little bottle in his pocket holding the emergency matches was whole and dry.
He made a blazing fire and searched the island from end to end, calling upon Jake in the darkness, but getting no answer, till, finally, so many half-drowned men seemed to come crawling out of the water onto the rocks and vanish among the shadows when he came up with them, that he lost his nerve completely and returned to lie down by the fire till daylight came. He then cut a bough to replace the lost paddles, and after one more useless search for his lost companion, he got into the canoe, fearing every moment he would upset again, and crossed over to the mainland. He knew roughly the position of our camping place, and after paddling a day and night and making many wary portages without food or covering, he reached us 2 days later.
This,
more or less,
was the story, and we, knowing whereof he spoke, knew that every word was literally true, and at the same time went into building up a hideous and prodigious lie. Once the recital was over, he collapsed, and Silver Fizz, after a general expression of sympathy from the rest of us, came again to the rescue.
But now, mister, you just got to eat and drink, whether you've a mind to or no.
And Matt Morris, cook that night, soon had the fried trout and bacon and the wheat cakes and hot coffee passing around a rather silent and oppressed circle. So we ate round the fire ravenously as we had eaten every night for the past 6 weeks, but with this difference, that there was one among us who gorged.
In spite of all our devices, he somehow kept himself the center of observation. When his tin mug was empty, Morris instantly passed the tea pail. When he began to mop up the bacon grease with dough on his fork, Hank reached out for the frying pan, and the can of steaming boiled potatoes was always by his side.
And there was another difference as well. He was sick, terribly sick before the meal was over. And this sudden nausea after food was more eloquent than words of what the man had passed through on his dreadful, foodless, ghost-haunted journey of over 40 miles to our camp.
In the darkness, he thought he would go crazy, he said. There were voices in the trees, and figures were always lifting themselves out of the water or from behind boulders to look at him and make awful signs. Jake constantly peered at him through the underbrush, and everywhere the shadows were moving, with eyes, footsteps, and following shapes.
We tried hard to talk of other things, but it was no use, for he was bursting with the rehearsal of his story and refused to allow himself the chances we were so willing and anxious to grant him. Once the pipes were lit and the dishes cleared away, it was useless to pretend any longer. The sparks from the burning logs zigzagged upwards into a sky brilliant with stars. It was all wonderfully still and peaceful, and the forest odors floated to us on the sharp autumn air. The cedar fire smelt sweet, and we could just hear the gentle wash of tiny waves along the shore. All was calm, beautiful, and remote from the world of men and passion. It was indeed a night to touch the soul, and yet I think none of us heeded these things. A bull moose might almost have thrust his head over our shoulders and have escaped unnoticed. The death of Jake the Swede, with its sinister setting, was the real presence that held the center stage and compelled attention.
You won't perhaps care to come along, mister, but I guess I'll go with one of the boys here and have a hunt for it. Sure, Jake and I done some biggest trips together in the old days, and I'll do that much for him.
It's deep water, they tell me, around them islands. But we'll find it, sure, Pop, if it's thar.
They all spoke of the body as it. There was a minute or two of heavy silence, and then Rushton again burst out with his story in almost the identical words he had used before. It was almost as if he had learned it by heart.
He wholly failed to appreciate the efforts of the others to let him off.
Silver Fizz rushed in, hoping to stop him. Morris and Hank closely followed his lead. You know, I once knew another traveling partner of his. Used to live down in Moose Jaw Rapids way.
Is that so? Kinda useful sort of feller.
All the idea the men had was to stop the tongue wagging before the discrepancies became so glaring that we should be forced to take notice of them and ask questions. But just as well try to stop an angry bull moose on the run. Out it came, and though the discrepancy this time was insignificant, it somehow brought us all in a second face-to-face with the inevitable and dreaded climax.
So I tramped all over that little bit of an island, hoping he might somehow have gotten in without my knowing it, and always thinking I heard that awful last cry of his in the darkness. And then the night dropped down impenetrably like a damn thick blanket out of the sky, and
all eyes fell away from his face.
Hank poked up the logs with his boot, and Morris seized an ember in his bare fingers to light his pipe, although it was already emitting clouds of smoke.
But the professor caught the ball flying. I thought you said he sank without a cry.
The cumulative effect of all these forces, hereto so rigorously repressed, now made themselves felt, and the circle spontaneously broke up, everybody moving at once by a common instinct.
The professor's wife left the party abruptly with excuses about an early start next morning. She first shook hands with Rushton, mumbling something about his comfort in the night.
The question of his comfort, however, devolved by force of circumstances upon myself, and he shared my tent. Just before wrapping up in my double blankets, he turned and began to explain that he had a habit of talking in his sleep and hoped I would wake him if I disturbed me by doing so. Well, he did talk in his sleep, and it disturbed me very much indeed. Cold though it was, I left the tent, intending to keep the old fire alight under the stars and spend the remaining hours till daylight in the open. As soon as I was out of the tent, I noticed at once another figure moving silently along the shore. It was Hank Milligan, and it was plain enough what he was doing. He was examining the holes that had been cut in the upper ribs of the canoe. He looked half ashamed when I came up with him and mumbled something about not being able to sleep for the cold. But there, standing together beside the overturned canoe, we both saw the holes were far too small for a man's hand and arm and could not have possibly been cut by two men hanging on for their lives in deep water. Those holes had been made afterwards. Hank said nothing to me, and I said nothing to Hank, and presently he moved off to collect logs for the fire, for it was a piercingly cold night and there were many degrees of frost.
3 days later, Hank and Silverfizz followed with the stumbling footsteps the old Indian trail that leads from Beaver Creek to the southwards.
A hammock was slung between them, and it weighed heavily. Yet neither of the men complained, and indeed, speech between them was almost nothing. Their thoughts, however, were exceedingly busy, and the terrible secret of the woods which formed their burden weighed far more heavily than the uncouth, shifting mass that lay in the swinging hammock and tugged so severely at their shoulders. They had found it in 4 feet of water, not more than a couple of yards from the lee shore of the island. And in the back of the head was a long, terrible wound, which no man could possibly have inflicted upon himself.
And now, from Shakespeare's Macbeth.
thrice the brinded cat hath mewed.
Thrice and once the hedge pig whined.
Happier cries, 'tis time, 'tis time.
Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw. Toad that under cold stone days and nights has 31. Sweltered venom sleeping got, boil thou first in the charmed pot.
Double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Fillet of a fenny snake. In the cauldron boil and bake eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog. Adder's fork and blind worm's sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing. For a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. Double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble.
Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, which is mummy, ma, and gulf. Of the ravened salt sea shark, root of hemlock, dig thee the dark. Liver of blaspheming Jew, gall of goat, and slips of yew. Slivered in the moon's eclipse, nose of Turk, and Tartar's lips. Finger of birth strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drab. Make the gruel thick and slab, and thereto a tiger's children for the ingredients of our cauldron.
Double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Cool it with a baboon's blood, then the charm is firm and good.
Voices hum, crooning over Moonlight Bay. Banjos strum, tuning while the moonbeams play. All alone, unknown, they find me. Memories like these remind me of the girl I left behind me down a Moonlight Bay. We were sailing along on Moonlight Bay. We could hear the voices ringing. They seemed to say, "You have stolen her heart. You have stolen her heart. Now don't go away, don't go away." As we sang love's old sweet songs on Moonlight Bay. Candle lights gleaming on the silent shore. Lonely nights gently till we weep once more. Far apart her heart is yearning with the sigh for mine, returning with the light of love still burning as the days of yore.
Days of yore.
We were sailing along on Moonlight Bay. We could hear the voices ringing. They seemed to say, "You have stolen her heart. You have stolen her heart. Now don't go away, don't go away." As we sang love's old sweet songs on Moonlight Bay. You have stolen her heart. You have stolen her heart. Now don't go away, don't go away. As we sang love's old sweet songs on Moonlight Bay. On Moonlight Bay.
At this time, please take a moment to refresh yourself We'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay, it is now time for part 3, Discovery. Each of the following speakers in this first piece is presenting a separate horror story. The stories are truly bite-sized, so buckle up.
10 eyes stared back into mine. 10 dead found behind the sign. 10 horrors about to come. 10 more. Nowhere to run.
His eyes turned completely black. He was no longer the man of my dreams. He was the monster in my nightmares. I knew I was to be devoured in the dead of night, and no one could hear my screams.
I worked as a custodian at a nursing home when I was younger for a while. There was this one woman who lived by herself, never had another roommate. But what she did have was a stuffed frog toy that she never let go of. Not when she was awake, not when she was asleep. Eventually she passed away, and we all thought her family buried the stuffed frog with her, but that frog kept showing up on nightstands of other tenants shortly before they passed away. I still dream about that stuffed toy.
He learned about the monster within himself as a boy. So he decided he should never get married. One day, a reckless woman made the mistake of falling in love with him. She liked to poke a stick through the holes in his brittle bamboo cage.
Fallen hope. The silence shattered with a scream that sliced through the dark. They stumbled to his side, finding him standing, wide-eyed and unblinking, his discarded bandage lying on the floor as he bellowed. They stood stunned, only to hear him demand in a tiny, furious voice,
I need a new Band-Aid! A pink one!
Eyes open. Hair on the back of your neck feeling wrapped all the way around, up to the crest of my widow's peak. For as long as I can remember, it's been like this. Here. Again. Following me. Must. Check. Can barely bring myself to face the mirror. Yep. Still there.
We now present a short work from a familiar name, Emily Bronte, followed by the words of 2 of the most important scientists of all time, Marie Curie and Isaac Newton. If you wish to read the latter for the full text from any of the 3 scholars you've heard from today, the links are in the digital program, or you can go to Gutenberg.org and search for them at your convenience.
The Night is Darkening Round Me by Emily Bronte. The night is darkening around me, the wild winds coldly blow, but a tyrant spell has bound me, and I cannot go. The giant trees are bending, their bare boughs weighted with snow. The storm is fast descending, and yet I cannot go. Clouds beyond clouds above me, waste beyond waste below. But nothing drear can move me. I will not, cannot go.
This piece is an excerpt from Marie Curie's actual speech. Radium is no more a baby. It is more than 20 years old, but the conditions of the discovery were somewhat peculiar. We must go back to the year 1897. Professor Curie and I worked at that time in the lavatory of the School of Physics and Chemistry. I was engaged in some work on uranium rays, which had been discovered 2 years before by Professor Becquerel. I spent some time in studying the ways of making good measurements of the uranium rays, and then I wanted to know if there were other elements giving out rays of the same kind. So, I took up a work about all known elements and their compounds and found that uranium compounds are active, and also all thorium compounds, but other elements were not found active. I took up measurements of minerals, and I found that several of those which contain uranium or thorium or both were active. But then, the activity was not what I could expect. It was greater than for uranium or thorium compounds. Then, I thought there should be in the minerals some unknown element having a much greater radioactivity than uranium or thorium. And I wanted to find and to separate that element. We thought it would be done in several weeks or months, but it took many years of hard work to finish that task. There was not one new element. There were several of them. But the most important is radium, which could be separated in a pure state. As the radioactivity was more strong in some products, we knew that we had succeeded in concentrating the new element. The difficulty was that there is not much more radium in a mineral. We now know that there is not even 1 part of radium in 1,000,000 parts of good ore. And 2, to get a small quantity of pure radium salt, one is obliged to work up a huge quantity of ore. And, well, that was very hard to do in a lavatory. We had not even a good lavatory at the time. We worked in a hangar where there were no improvements, no good chemical arrangements. We had no help, no money. And because of that, the work could not go on as it would have under better conditions. I did myself the numerous crystallizations. And in 1902, I finally succeeded getting pure radium chloride and determining the atomic weight of the new element radium, which is number 226. Now, the special interest of radium is in the intensities of its rays, which is a several million times greater than the uranium rays. And the effects of the rays make the radium so important. If we take a practical point of view, then the most important property of the rays is the production of physiological effects on the cells of the human organism. What is considered particularly important is the treatment of cancer. The radium is more than 100,000 times dearer than gold. But We must not forget that when radium was discovered, no one knew that it would be proved useful in hospitals. The work was one of pure science. And this is proof that scientific work must not be considered from the point of view of the direct usefulness of it. It must be done for itself, for the beauty of science. And then there is always the chance that a scientific discovery may become like the radium, a benefit for humanity. But science is not rich, does not dispose of important means, it does not meet recognition before the material usefulness of it has been proved. So, I am very grateful to the American women who wish me to have more of the radium and give me the opportunity of doing more work with it. The scientific history of radium is beautiful. I hope that we may have some beautiful progress in the following years. It is my earnest desire that some of you should carry on this scientific work and keep for your ambition the determination to make a permanent contribution to science. Thank you.
All right, this comes from a letter from Isaac Newton containing his new theory about light and colors. To perform my late promise to you, I shall without further ceremony acquaint you that in the beginning of the year 1666, at which time I applied myself to the grinding of optic glasses of other figures than spherical, I procured me a triangular glass prism, to try therewith the celebrated phenomena of colors. And in order thereto, having darkened my chamber and made a small hole in my window shuts, to let in a convenient quantity of the sun's light, I placed my prism at his entrance, that it might be thereby refracted to the opposite wall. It was at first a very pleasing divertisement to view the vivid and intense colors produced thereby, but after a while, applying myself to consider them more circumspectly, I became surprised to see them in an oblong form, which, according to the received laws of refraction, I expected should have been circular. They were terminated at the sides with straight lines, but at the ends the decay of light was so gradual that it was difficult to determine justly what was their figure. Yet they seemed semicircular. But the most surprising and wonderful composition was that of whiteness. There was no one sort of rays which alone can exhibit this. 'Tis ever compounded, and to its composition are requisite all the aforesaid primary colors mixed in a due proportion. I have often with admiration beheld that all the colors of the prism, being made to converge and thereby to be again mixed, as they were in the light before it was incident upon the prism, reproduced light entirely and perfectly white, and not at all sensibly differing from a direct light of the sun, unless when glasses I used were not sufficiently clear, for then they would be a little inclined to their color. Hence, therefore, it comes to pass that whiteness is the usual color of light, for light is confused aggregate of rays, imbued with all sorts of colors, as they are promiscuously darted from the various parts of luminous bodies. And of such a confused aggregate, as I said, is generated whiteness, if there be a due proportion of the ingredients, but if any one predominate, the light must incline to that color, as it happens in the blue flame of brimstone, the yellow flame of a candle, and the various colors of the fixed stars. These things considered, the manner how colors are produced by the prism is evident. For, of the rays constituting the incident light, since those which differ in color proportionally differ in refrangibility, they, by their unequal refractions, must be severed and dispersed into an oblong form, in an orderly succession, from the least refracted scarlet to the most refracted violet. And for the same reason it is that objects, when looked upon through a prism, appear colored. For the deformed rays, by their unequal refractions, are made to diverge towards several parts of the retina, and there express the images of things colored, as in the former case, when they did the sun's image upon a wall. And by this inequality of refractions, they become not only colored, but also very confused and indistinct. Why the colors of the rainbow appear in falling drops of rain is also from hence evident. For those drops which refract the rays, disposed to appear purple in greatest quantity to the spectator's eye, refract the rays of other sorts so much less as to make them pass beside it. And such are the drops on the inside of the primary bow, and on the outside of the secondary or exterior one. So those drops which refract in greatest plenty the rays, apt to appear red towards the spectator's eye, refract those of other sorts so much more as to make them pass beside it. And such are the drops on the exterior part of the primary and interior part of the secondary bow. Thank you.
All right, well, so we've got one more number after this, but before we get to that, we just wanted to thank the entirety of our cast, all the barber shoppers, all those part of Public Domain Players and the radio drama, and all the Reader's Theater stuff. Thank you as well. A few special thanks. Thank you to Tammy for letting us. Thank you for letting us perform here and for making kick-ass coffee.
Is it Cricket brand?
Maybe next time. But we're working on it. That 300 milligrams. Special thanks as well to Feel Creative and Gus Applequist for letting us rehearse at the office and helping out with the camera and running sound. You can't see him, but he's on the ground. And thanks, Michael, for coming to me with ideas and throwing this together.
Isn't Tim one heck of a writer, y'all? So good. We were literally scaring ourselves reading this thing in the radio drama rehearsal. It was so great. So yeah, well done, Tim. But and to the barber shoppers, thanks to all of you for driving up from all parts of Central Kansas to be part of this. It's really a delight. This is the second one. Hopefully we can do some more of these in the future. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for staying, and we hope that we've given you something to take with you from today, whether it's joy or something to stimulate you intellectually or whatever. Hopefully more than one. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for being part of this Salad Expo journey.
One last announcement. If you don't have anything going on this evening, there is another performance here at 6 p.m. Anna and the Snapdragons will be performing here. So you should come and hang out for that. And buy more coffee.
All right. Thank you so much.
Here we go.
When all the world is a hopeless jumble and the raindrops tumble tumble all around. Heaven opens a magic lane, a magic lane. And when all the clouds darken up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away up on the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh why can't I? Why
That's all there is. There ain't no more. Thank you so much.